What's going on, everybody? It's PJ here with the CRNA Drip, and this is going to be a short video on the type of experience you need to get into CRNA school. So let's get into it. So with this video, I'm just going to simplify it into two categories: quality versus quantity. And the first part we're going to talk about is quality. So by quality, I mean acuity directly. What type of acuity patients does your hospital receive? So of course, everyone wants to get into a teaching level 1 trauma facility because that's almost a guaranteed way to see high acuity patients, rare type of patient diagnoses. Just you learn so much with critical thinking, and you learn from the doctors doing rounds. You just learn a lot, and you're able to be in sponge mode the entire time and pick up on concepts. You learn great time management. You learn how to work under stressful situations, because there's nothing like having a patient just bleed out on you and you're thinking about, okay, what can I do next? What can I do next? So you definitely will get a good, solid experience from a level 1 trauma center. But not everyone can get into a level trauma center. So how do you know your experience is a good experience? If you happen to be in a facility that is not level 1, look at the patients on your floor. Are they mostly on vents? How many drips do they average? Are they just on saline, or is it just a heparin drip? Or are they on multiple pressors at one time? What type of machinery do you use? Are you doing CVVH? Are you doing bedside procedures where you can't ship off your patients because they're so sick, you have to do it right then and there? So if you're in an area where there are no close by big facilities, you may be the hospital that gets all of the sickies. So it's not necessarily to say that just because you're in ICU that isn't level 1 that you don't get sick patients. That's not the case at all. So really focus on the type of patients that your unit specifically gets, to say, okay, you know what? My patients are pretty sick. Or you can say, you know what? My patients are not very sick. I'm transferring them out to either other hospitals or out of the ICU. They're not vented. They're not requiring much. So gauge how well your experience is going based off of your patient population. It's also important to keep in mind that the sickest patient on your unit may be a somewhat sick patient or not sick at all patient in a level 1 facility. So that's also why level 1 is always preferred, because you know for a fact you're going to get sick patients. There's no doubt about it. Of course, there are patients that transfer out of the ICU, but the sick patients, they're the sickest of the sickest. So, and that's why schools really validate those who are in level 1, because it's like, okay, we know you got good experience. So which ICU is the best? Is it CV? Is it SICU? Is it MICU? Is it neuro? Is it PICU? Is it NICU? Which one? Pick an ICU. Honestly, it really does not matter. Some schools are a little bit more hesitant with some of the more specialized ICUs like PICU and NICU, but for the most part, you're definitely going to get good experience in CV ICU, just because there's such a huge hemodynamic component. You will be one of the smartest ICU nurses if you really pay attention and learn everything that there is to learn. If you're in the surgical ICU or the medical ICU, you're going to see a variety of different patient populations that you will be equipped to handle any type of patient. And that's what I liked about the surgical ICU, was I was equipped to handle cardiac patients, neuro patients, trauma patients, surgical patients, medical patients. I got them all. So you get a good broad spectrum of patients to really get a foundation for. With medical patients, ICU patients, they're some of the sickest patients ever, because they have so many comorbidities that are hindering the progress of them healing. So not only are you tackling their primary diagnosis, you have to deal with the DKA, and you have to deal with the CHF, and you have to deal with the neuro aspect, and their ammonia level being sky high. Like, you have to deal with so much. The bleeding, oh my God, the GI bleeding continuously. There's just so many aspects to MICU patients that sometimes you don't know where to start. So with neuro, bless your heart, because you really have to be a time management freak to be on top of your game in neuro. There's so many frequent Q1 hour, Q30 minute checks. Every little detail can be a change for the worse. So you're very vigilant as a neuro ICU nurse. And then you can't really sedate your patients because you need to monitor for any neuro changes. So you're hyper vigilant as a neuro ICU nurse. PICU and NICU I'm not too familiar with, but I know to be a PICU nurse, everything is so meticulous because you're dealing with kids. So everything is so meticulous that you really have to be a detail-oriented person. So as you do with all of the ICUs, but I'm saying all of this to say every ICU has their pros and cons, and every ICU has what it takes to give you what you need to get into CRNA school. There is no top ICU. Everywhere is beneficial to getting into CRNA school as long as the acuity is high. That's the main thing. You have to get high acuity patients. And also know that ER does not count. IMC does not count. IR does not count. And any tele does not count. Of course, med-surg does not count. Next, we're going to talk about quantity, and this really means the amount of time you've been in the ICU. So, of course, you need a minimum of 1 year to be qualified to apply for CRNA school. That's going to be dependent on where your ICU is, what type of acuity it is, and just the school. Some schools may want you to have 1 year by the time the program starts, but you can apply before 1 year. Some places want 1 year by the time you apply. Some places want 2.5 years. So it's all dependent on the school and kind of just what you bring. And that just ties it back together to say experience is not the only thing that they look at when you apply to CRNA school. It's important, but it's not the only factor. So this was meant to be a very short video about experience because I hear all the time, which ICU should I work in? Does it matter if I'm in the neuro ICU versus CV ICU? I know people who've gotten in who were CV ICU nurses, SICU nurses, MICU nurses, neuro nurses, peds nurses, NICU nurses. I've seen it all, so it is possible. So don't get discouraged if you hear from someone else that, oh, your ICU does not count. Don't rely on that. You rely on the school that you're applying to and what they tell you they accept. And if you have any questions or comments, or if you know anything else about your experience that is required to become a CRNA, put it down below in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, turn your post notifications on. And with that being said, I'm out.